29 years ago, February 2nd, 1996, Guru Maharaj left here in Mayapur. And I'd like to just say a few words. I said some things this morning, I'll repeat a few things so you will hear, I think. And we can just have a little something to think about. And we offer some prayers to him, because part of the theme we were speaking this morning was about loneliness and being misunderstood, and how so many of us who came to Guru Maharaj, we felt like it's the nature when you come to Guru, we find somebody, this person understands me. And we found that shelter in him the first time. So in late January, Guru Maharaj told Prem Prayojan here this morning that I'm thinking to leave this world. Just as Śrīla Gaura felt disgusted and left early, I'm also thinking to leave early. But I'll go and ask Gopal. We were mentioning that this morning. So then he went to Gadagiri. We don't know what happened in Gadagiri, but he told Shamgiri, his cousin brother, that who was older than him, that you'll see this temple opening. They were constructing for Gopal, but I won't. And Gadashan said, well, what are you saying? I'm older than you. How is it that I'll see it and you won't? Guru said, no, Gopal's pleased with you. And then the next day, Guru Maharaj came back to Bhubaneswar, signed his bank account over to Chaitanya Prabhu. And the next morning, he gave a class in Nityananda Trayodasi, which was quite an amazing class. And then he came to Mayapur. And he was attending the GBC meetings. And he'd written later, we looked in his diaries, at that final diary entry. As was often his habit, he would write offerings to Gopal. Dear Gopal, on this day, I want to offer this and this. And he wrote that entry, hey Gopal, please give me like-minded association. And so I said I'd gone to see him just before the GBC meetings took place. And I was very glad to be there. It was a private meeting, I won't say so much, but it's Krishna's mercy that I was able to go see him at that time. Anupam and Madhavananda were there at that time. Ron Prabhu was there in the room. And I want to thank, just by the way, Madhavananda and for taking care of the program the last couple of years. Here in Mayapur, we were blacklisted. So there were two Madhajis, Mother Chandrika and who's the other one? Vaijayanti Mala, your old friend, came to see Guru Maharaj that evening with a question. And the question was, why did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu go to Puri? Why didn't he stay in Mayapur? And Guru Maharaj then began to tell this very ecstatic story, which you may have seen, familiar with me, titled 3 Logs of Wood. That was his phrase. About the first Rath Yatra, how Krishna left Vrindavan, left Dwarka to return to Vrindavan. And he goes through the whole story, telling them. And later we talked about Jayanti Mala and Chandrika. And they told us it was like there was some magic in the room, something. It was electric. And Guru Maharaj was very, very absorbed and telling the story. And he's becoming very emotional as he was speaking it. And he speaks about Krishna and Radharani's first meeting after such a long separation. And when he got to the point of eye-to-eye union, his voice was becoming choked. And tears were coming to his eyes. We spoke of Chandrika and Vaijayanti Mala about this. And Guru Maharaj said, I'm sorry, but I can't speak anymore. Bhakti Prabhu was there, and those ladies left. And then Guru Maharaj was like having some trouble breathing or something. And he asked the devotees to picture Gopal, put the picture in his hand, and he called out Gopal and told them Kirtan Koro, chant. The devotees started doing Kirtan, and Guru Maharaj closed his eyes. And he never opened his eyes again. And Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Rupa Prabhu, was very, very concerned. He ran out to find the doctor. At that time, actually, he and I were seeing Ayurvedic doctor named Damodar Swarup, who his parents were disciples of Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta. He was initiated by Bhakti Kusum Swami Maharaj from the Yoga Peeth. And his wife was initiated by Jayapataka Maharaj. She was kind of an ISKCON devotee and a well-reputed Ayurvedic doctor. He actually has a gold medal in Ayurveda from the World Health Organization for successfully treating AIDS patients. He's quite an amazing doctor. And so he called for Damodar Swarupa. Damodar came up, and Guru Maharaj was laying unconscious, and we don't know what kind of state. Damodar took his pulse. Later I spoke with Damodar Swarupa about it, and he told me that when I first came in and took his pulse, he was still present. And then a little later, I took his pulse again, and he left. And he said that he'd been a doctor for 30, 40 years. He said, I've seen a number of persons leave their body, but I've never, ever seen anyone leave their body like this. He said there was no physical reason. It wasn't he had a heart attack or stroke or anything like that. It was just, he said he had on his body all the symptoms of Astasakti-Karabha, or ecstatic symptoms. There's dasa, 10 different symptoms of Sudhira Prabhas. Sudhira Prabhas is separation when Krishna goes to a distant place, like Mathura or Dwarka. It's the most intense type of separation. And the 10 different symptoms of that, the last of which is mrityu, with death. And Prabhu told me, he said he just became very ecstatic and he left. I was over near the Rahasta complex in one room. Someone came to get us, and we went back, and all the devotees were crying, and so many things going on. Later, we took Maharaj to his body to Bhubaneswar, and we put him in Samadhi there. So, as I was mentioning this morning, for many years now, as you can imagine, I've tried to make sense out of all that. Because what really struck me the most, I'm a human being. I have relationships with people. The nature of relationships is they're reciprocal. You give something to someone and you kind of expect something back. And so Maharaj was always surrounded by loving devotees. And all of a sudden for him just to leave like that, there was some premonition about it, but he didn't make any goodbyes. He didn't say, and he was just completely detached. And what really struck me personally, as I was mentioning this morning, was his loneliness. I will use that word. It's not exactly appropriate, but loneliness in the sense that he was looking for good association. And although he was surrounded by so many sycophant disciples, he didn't find that kind of association, even though all of us were very adoring and wanting to serve very much. Krishna wanted him to go, and he just left. So that took place about this time. I'd like to ask Niranjana Swami, who was also present here in Mayapur at that time, if you could sing Jaya Pramadana.
That cut some carton. This is little. Jiyadilo Premadana Varuna Prachu Hail Prabhu Kota Gela Chanyata Dasa Raghunatha Pati Tapama What we just
He who brought the treasure of divine love and is filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality is Srinivasa Acharya gone? Where are my Srup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the Savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I'll smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps.
Chakshu unmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Upam karoti vasudev Om Namo Gayate Gare Vyatpipatam Namahe Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Pidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namahe Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prabhu Nirvishekshara Sunyavari Astachadi Satarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Govinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I decided that today I was going to do something different. I hope the devotees will bear with me. I've come to this event on many occasions, in different places, both for appearance and disappearance of Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj. And I've oftentimes spoken about, not oftentimes, I believe it's probably all the time, I've spoken about the association I had with him, a memorable event in my life in 1993. It was really the only time that I was able to be with him alone and really get to understand this depth of his personality. Who he represented. As I could clearly see, he was representing the spiritual world, he was representing his Guru Varga, spiritual master, and many things I learned about him during the course of that 2-hour conversation, although it wasn't a conversation, I'd say 99% he was speaking to me, and I may have said a few words, but I don't even remember what I said. And it was a transformational experience. I've seen Gaura Govinda Maharaj on many other occasions, from the time of that meeting with him in 1993, of course, 1994, 1995, 1996, I would always observe him in the GBC meetings, and I would observe him in various places when he would give class. I made every effort to go. I was also had a similar experience as was mentioned this morning by Niranjana Prabhu the first time I sat down to hear him give class. I just couldn't understand. And I think it was probably the first time I sat down to hear him give class. It was before I had that meeting with him in 1993, because he had been on the GBC probably as many years as I had been. They came to the GBC in 1987. I think it came around the same time. And but it wasn't until 1993 that I really began to appreciate his personality. Some things were mentioned when I was here earlier today. I won't go into so much depth of it, but there were controversies. He was bold, very outspoken, very much committed to Tattva and Gaudiya Siddhanta, and his presentation was, for many of us, different, and because he was so outspoken, sometimes people kind of projected to project their own conceptions onto somebody else, and thinking that, you know, he was trying to promote himself, which nothing could be further from the truth. But you know, there was some misconception of that, you know, because he would speak about, you know, the position of Guru, and sometimes statements, you know, made were challenged. I mean, I'll give one example, just one example. I don't know if I ever said this publicly enough. Okay, it's a small group. I can't remember what year it was. We were in a GBC meeting, and that was sort of like a breakout session, whatever breakout session was. But and one devotee was standing at the board, and they were writing down about Guru. You know, what is the role of the Guru in the Krishna International Society of Krishna Consciousness? And everybody was making lists and categorizing them on the board. And Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj raised his hand and says, "Guru gives Krishna." And then, so he said, he was, at this point, the devotee was taking everything. He's taking everything and putting on the board. And that was the only thing that Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj offered to that discussion, was that one point. And then a little bit later on, when he was consolidating all the different things, he was going through each one and he was explaining what he was doing. He said, well, maybe this here, maybe we'll put this over there and this over there. And he took the Guru gives Krishna, he said, we'll put this over here. And when he did that,
What
We're just rearranging things. No! And he started screaming, leave it there! And he was so emphatic about that point that, it's Krishna. It's not a secondary point. And he was quite emphatic, and because of his outspokenness and presentation, he was victorious. It stayed right where it was. And that's just an example. But I would oftentimes observe him. And then, because he was controversial, I kept a lot in my heart about my thoughts about him. I didn't really speak openly about it, but I did feel a sense in my heart that I could speak openly the truth because there's such personalities as Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj present on the planet now, and I got strength from his presence on the planet, and I really felt that when I spoke the truth, that I felt that oftentimes I quote a verse from the Bhagavatam that pure devotional service is so transcendently potent that simply by hearing about it, simply by repeating what one's heard, simply by meditating on it, simply by faithfully and respectfully accepting that it exists, simply by praising the service rendered by others, then a person can become purified. And that verse in the Bhagavatam, I think that because of Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj's presence, that I really could understand the meaning of that verse, that I could faithfully, respectfully accept that it exists, because after my time that I spent with him, it was so obvious that here is a Vaishnava who is extremely transcendental, whose really senses and mind is completely controlled, whose only interest is to glorify Krishna, to speak about Krishna, and who always represents the truth in everything that he says, not simply by his words, but by his example. People thought he was speaking about himself because he was such an example that he could speak that way, and it was not about himself. So I started listening to his classes, and by listening more and more to his classes, I gradually started to learn to understand his accent, and I made sure that when he was giving classes during the GBC meetings that I always would attend his class. And at one point I had written a letter to him, he wrote me a short response back, and I observed him. I guess you could say I was observing him, and you find that here's the person whose character is spotless. And I'm not really speaking so much about my meeting with him that I spent in 1993, because I didn't want to go into the whole meeting again, because I've spoken about it many times. But he said to me, the intensity of the way he spoke, his inability at one time, he stopped speaking, he couldn't speak any longer, and he said, "Please forgive me, I can't speak," and he had to stop. He was so choked up, remembering the things he had heard about Srila Prabhupada, that Prabhupada had not given us everything, and he was just like a lion, He went on to show how Prabhupada gave everything, pulled out Chaitanya Charitamrita, started reading a verse to me, and started quoting the verse, quoting Siddhanta, and telling me the things that we would often hear him say, but everything's in Prabhupada's books, is we just simply have to dive deep, don't stay on the surface. If you want jewels, you have to go deep and then down below the ocean to find jewels. He is on the surface, all you'll get is fish. And other things I could say, but this is sort of like an introduction I'm making because I kept a lot of things in my heart about Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj. I didn't speak openly about it. And when he departed, I was here in Mayapur. And I think I happened to look in the computer today and I found a letter that I wrote to a godbrother the night he departed. And Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj departed. And I was writing a very confidential letter, opening my heart to him about my realizations about Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj and how much he meant to me. And it was, I don't know, maybe it was 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I couldn't fall asleep. And we just had the, I'll speak about it in the letter. I'll try not to, the letter is pages long. But I think it's important to know that I'm sure I wasn't alone. I mean, I'm sure that the example that as I write of how much impact he had on my life, how much I appreciated him, how much I prayed to him, how important his presence was to me. Everything was experienced by many, not just his disciples, but all these who speak openly about it. It was just like a lightning rod, you know. It was very. I tried to speak to those with whom I could speak in confidence, but I didn't speak so openly about it. So this letter, I thought it would be good if I shared at least some of the things that I had written on the night of his departure, if you will allow me and if you'll bear with me. As I said, it's 3 pages long. It may sound a little bit redundant in some places, but I'll try to give explanations as I'm reading why I was thinking the way that I was thinking. I wrote to a godbrother of mine in America. His name is P.R.I. Mohan Prabhu. He was a very dear godbrother. And the place I had, that 2-hour meeting with Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj was at his temple. Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj had stayed, there was no place for him to stay in the temple. It was just a small house. So he stayed in a very small motel just 100 meters down from the temple. And I had driven down from Boston to see him. And P.R.I. Mohan had just the evening before, I wasn't there for the program that Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj gave. I was in Boston at the time. But I didn't want to miss his association, so I drove down the next day. And P.R.I. was also very impressed by Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj's class. In fact, there's a picture that P.R.I. Mohan keeps in his room. And Gaura Govinda Maharaj is leaving the temple building, putting his arm on P.R.I.'s shoulder. You know, he's patting P.R.I. on the back. And P.R.I. keeps that picture. It's very dear picture. That won't go anywhere. He keeps it very open in his room. He also appreciated Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj during that visit. So he could understand, having spent 2 hours with him on that night afterwards, how much it meant to me. Some of the details are not accurate. For instance, I didn't know what the picture was when they were holding it up in front of Gaura Govinda Maharaj. I didn't know exactly what he had been speaking about. I was just told a few things that when I came into the room. And so the details are not all accurate, and they've come out, as Madhavananda Prabhu spoke about what Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj was speaking about, those two devotees. So, please accept my humble obeisance, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today my heart is very heavy. I'm greatly feeling the loss of a wonderful Vaishnava whose presence on this planet gave me much inspiration in my own Krishna consciousness. Last night, yeah, because this was early in the morning, I was up in the middle of the night. Last night, Lord Krishna took Gaura Govinda Maharaj back to his eternal abode. I'm sharing the following thoughts with you because you are a very dear God brother, and I want to share these feelings with somebody dear. Last night I was in the flat where I'm staying near Prabhupada's Samadhi Mandir, speaking with Niranjana Swami and Bhujan Prabhu. My servant, Veda Saradas, knocked on the door, entered, and said that His Holiness Gaura Govinda Maharaj had left the planet just about 30 minutes prior. I was shocked. My mind was reeling, and the only thing I could think of was, why would Krishna take him from us now? Somehow I couldn't believe it. I jumped up, quickly put on my shoes, and moved faster than my legs have ever been able to carry me since my right one was broken here in Navadvip 2 years ago. The three of us walked briskly to the Panch building where Maharaja always stays. I had to force my way through a crowd of devotees who had gathered outside his door. Chanting of Hare Krishna was emanating from within the room and outside as well. As I got to the door, the few devotees stationed there to hold back devotees acknowledged who I was, and fortunately they immediately allowed me to enter. The room was full. Present were many senior Vaishnavas, GPC men and sannyasis. About 25 of Gaura Govinda Maharaj's disciples were also present. I looked towards the bed, saw Maharaja's body propped up against the back of the bed, legs extended forward, and immediately dropped to pay full dandavats. At this point, somehow I still could not believe that he had passed. Maybe he's in Samadhi, I thought. About 6 to 8 of his disciples were feverishly massaging Maharaja's legs. Another was holding a picture before his eyes. I couldn't see the picture, but I suspected it might have been a picture of Prabhupada. Another disciple was holding onto Maharaja's head so that it would not fall forward. I looked intently at his face. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes closed. His face seemed effulgent. He had a very peaceful appearance. His body was garlanded with several garlands. He was not wearing a kirtan, though it could barely be noticed since many garlands were hung around his neck, covering the whole front of his body. Naturally, everyone was quite sober. Some of his disciples were crying loudly, some softly, tears streaming down their faces as they stared intently, seemingly waiting for a sign that he would come back to external consciousness. Seeing their faces and then looking back and forth between them and Maharaja's face, I gradually began to feel my eyes start swelling up too. It wasn't long before I found myself crying, though not incessantly as some of his disciples were crying, but enough to realize that I was experiencing separation from someone who was very dear to me. I remember the lamentation I felt when I found out that Srila Prabhupada left the planet. Though not as intense, still I was lamenting that I had not taken advantage of Gaura Govinda Maharaj's association while he was with us. And now I was facing, though still not fully convinced, the thought that I may not ever have that opportunity again. When I was with Gaura Govinda Maharaj in 1993, that time, in the course of our conversation, Maharaja, he did a few things. One thing is he tried to get me to sit up next to him, which I didn't. I was actually on crutches at that time, but it was the year I broke my leg in there in Mayapur. And so he kept on repeating, "Come, sit." No, please, I can't sit. And he did that several times. And then also in the course of the conversation, he said to me, "You should come spend time with me in Bhubaneswar." At least 10 times, he must have said that. Not only during the conversation, but even when I was leaving, he reiterated again, please come, Maharaj, please come. And I could see why he wanted me to come. He wanted to share. He just wanted to share. He was just, Madhavananda, I think he spoke about the word loneliness. I'm not going to repeat the topic of his discussion. He said what he said, and I understood exactly what he meant. And Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaja was really, I mean, he was associating with elevated personalities all the time in his consciousness. And he wanted to give so much. He wanted to give what he was getting. And I really sensed that he really wanted me to come for no reason except he wanted to give what he had. And as I was writing right here, I said that he said that I was lamenting that I had not taken advantage of Gaura Govinda Maharaja's association, despite the fact that he had asked me to spend time with him in Bhubaneswar so many times in the course of that conversation. I didn't go. I was too busy. Doing what? I don't know. I should have been answering his call. But the thought raced through my mind that I may not ever have that opportunity again. So all I could do was stand in awe, chant, and within my mind pray that maybe Krishna would let Gaura Govinda Maharaj stay with us a little while longer. I stood motionless for about 20 minutes, continuing to chant, and then finally decided to move elsewhere, towards the back of the room where I could see several GBC men having discussion. I walked over and saw that Jayapataka Maharaj was holding a pad of paper in which there was a diagram which looked like an explanation how to place Maharaj's body into Samadhi. It was right about then that it finally hit. Gaura Govinda Maharaj really has left the planet. Tears came again. I wiped my face with my upper cloth and decided to speak up and ask someone what had happened. The first person who seemed available for questioning was my godbrother, Prabhu, so I asked him if he knew of the events leading up to his departure. Then he just described the events as he understood at that time. I won't read all of that. I just all heard about the conversation, about how he left. By this time, I began deliberating on the significance of Gaura Govinda Maharaj's departure. It was the appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the year of Srila Prabhupada's centennial. He left his body in Mayapur now. Present were so many devotees, both godbrothers and disciples, loudly chanting the holy names. He was speaking about Lord Jagannath just minutes before he departed. How could there be a more auspicious departure from this world? So many more things could be said about this, and I have no doubt will be said in due course of time. But there's no trace of doubt in my mind that Gaura Govinda Maharaj entered into Lord Krishna's eternal Leela last night, and this world is now bearing the loss of a highly elevated soul an intimate associate of Lord Krishna. And I went on to describe what took place, how Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaja's body was taken to the temple room, put on the altar before Sri Madhavananda. We were chanting appropriate prayers at the time, devotees were chanting, having kirtan. Then he was taken in procession to Prabhupada's Samadhi, circumambulated Prabhupada's Samadhi, and then was taken back and he was taken off to Bhubaneswar. I didn't write all the details because they're not so necessary. It's just my observation explaining what had happened. It was 12:30 a.m. I was tired but simply could not get to sleep. All night long I was reliving the events of the evening while asking myself again and again, why did Krishna take Maharaj from us now? It was a very sobering experience for me. As you can see, I was very attached to Gaura Govinda Maharaj. And throughout the day I've come to find that so many other senior Vaishnavas were similarly attached to him too. As I said once before, there's more that I could say, there's more that I want to say, but at this point I can't find the words to express all that I'm feeling. I'm just barely getting a glimpse of what it means to be attached to a sadhu. Can you believe that I've spoken to Gaura Govinda Maharaj only once for 2 hours? And that meeting with Maharaj was when he was there in Hartford almost 2 years ago. It was then that I really got the opportunity to see the qualities of someone who was really attached to speaking only about topics related to Krishna. Hare Prabhu, I beg you to please bless me, that I too will someday develop a taste for glorifying and broadcasting the Lord's glories, in the same way that our Godbrother has shown me by his wonderful example. I know that I have no hope for Krishna consciousness in this life, unless I can get mercy from Vaishnavas. Dear fallen servants, Niranjana Swami. Hare Krishna. So, one thing that I will say from that meeting, Gaura Govinda Maharaj was telling me, telling his stories. Told a lot of stories. I won't talk about Bhubaneswar. I talked about the project, the leadership, the obstacles, things that he had to go through, and the instructions he received from Prabhupada, and the firm faith he had in Prabhupada's instructions, and the austerities he had to undergo, and his enthusiasm to embrace them, and how everything manifested by the desire of Srila Prabhupada, how the Bhubaneswar temple manifested by Prabhupada's desire, and how he was simply an instrument. And then he started talking about his association and the things that he had to hear in Puri about how Prabhupada had not given everything. And he started speaking about people coming again and again, hearing these things, and he just couldn't accept it. And at that point he became very choked. He said, "Forgive me, Maharaj," and he was crying. And he said, "I could not speak any longer," and he stopped speaking for a few minutes and then done. When he was able to speak again, he started telling me how he had been hearing the way he presented it to me. He just folded his hands, put his hands to his head, and he said that he had gone to hear many things from a recently departed Vaishnava, who was a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he was holding this Vaishnava in great reverence, the things that he had heard from him. And he began telling me how the spiritual master, after he departs, one of the ways he speaks to his disciples, he speaks to the mouths of other Vaishnavas. And he was quoting a verse. To this day, I wouldn't pray by Ocean and see if he asked him if he know the verse. Quoting a verse, I haven't been able to find it. I thought it's the Bhagavad, but it's definitely not in Bhagavad. And he said how the spiritual master speaks to such Sisha through the mouth of another Vaishnava. And he was explaining his experience of Prabhupada, instructing him through the mouth of the Vaishnava. And I said many times, when Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaja was speaking Siddhanta, you know, that because it's Siddhanta, it's the truth, and it actually is the way it is. And my experience in being in his presence, sitting on the floor at his feet, and hearing him speak on these topics, I had the same experience of Prabhupada speaking to me through the mouth of Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaja. And it was so profound that that was one of the experiences that somehow impacted me the most in my association with him. And then he was telling books of reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, telling pastimes from Chaitanya Charitamrita, explaining how Prabhupada's everything is in Prabhupada's books, and he really emphasized it again and again, hammered on that point. We should find everything, it's all there in Prabhupada's books. We should never think that he has given us, it's not given us everything. And then he started, in a very animated way, he started telling me the pastime of the beggar of Prema. And it was very, I mean, he took his, to the point where, you know, he took his upper cloth. It was like a dramatic performance. I felt like I was sitting at a dramatic performance. This Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj was narrating the story when Krishna had to adopt the appearance of a beggar and sing a song that he received. It was given to him by Vrinda Devi, and it was being kept. Radharani, she was sulking, and Krishna had to break her sulkiness and found out the only way that he would get the opportunity was to go, and he began crying, and then Purnamasi came, and the Vrinda Devi came and gave all these instructions for Krishna to adopt this dress and to go like a beggar begging for Radha Prema. And then who was it? Lalita Vishwakar was standing at the front where Radharani was waiting, and she said, she saw the sannyasi Thakur and asked him, you know, can you please come and tell the fortune of our Saki? And then she asked, maybe you can read her palm, and said, no, I don't read palms, I'm sannyasi, I don't touch women. And then said, I simply want to see her forehead. And Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj took his upper plum and he was playing just like this. He was sitting there. He covered his face like this. He said, no, I can, very expert, I can sit this by seeing the lines in the forehead. I can tell what lies in the future. It's like he told no, she doesn't need this cloth. I need male. But I'm an ordinary male. Don't you understand who I am? Sannyasi. And then he pulled up the cloth. and told me the whole pastime, and then began giving me the purport. And it was just complete bliss. It could have been a whole temple full of devotees. Didn't make any difference if it was just me sitting there. It's the same way. It just did the whole lila. And then he started talking more. And then it was, I guess, can't remember what brought the meeting to a close. I just don't remember what brought it to a close. But we were going to the door, and then Maharaj, I don't know. He was somewhere else when he was talking to me. There was Leela, and I just couldn't understand the Leela. He was just blurting it out in ecstasy. And he just wanted to give. And I was just standing there in shock, and I couldn't go anywhere. I was just spellbound. And then I think I opened the door. And he said, Maharaj, you come to Bhubaneswar. And I didn't say anything. But that was the kind of experience that left that kind of impression on me when I wrote that letter to my God, P.R.A. Mahaprabhu. And I cried. But Alvin taught me what it was to be separated from a Vaishnava. And I've spoken long enough. I think it's supposed to end at 7:30. Hoping the thing that I said tonight was relevant. I just felt it was important that devotees know that there were many devotees. I'm just wasn't alone. Many devotees who understood that Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaja was a special soul, was a Premi Bhakta. And he came to give nothing less than pure love of God. I'm so unfortunate that despite the fact that I had more than a love of mantra, I didn't take full advantage of this association. I pray for those who took more advantage of this association than I was able to take, that they bless me, and may somehow assist them in their service to their Guru Maharaj, and allow me to be a servant in some way of Śrīla Gaura Govinda Maharaj. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Tattva. Śrīla Gaura.
I just asked Bhakti Rasayana Swami if he'd like to speak something. Is it okay if I read something from him first? I'd like to share something with you from some diary entries. In other words, I'm just reflecting on what you were saying, Maharaj. And this, not a theme, but just something that really came up in my heart contemplating about Maharaj. This theme of loneliness, but it's a hankering of the heart, where devotees are hankering for association like that. And this is also the essence of sadhu sangha. When we come close to a sadhu and they share something from their heart, and what do they share? You can imagine some persons who were captured during the Vietnam War and made prisoners of war, and how they were suffering and tortured. And that torture will always be with them. And whatever they speak, because it was such a profound, intense thing. And so, from my perspective, from what you're speaking, this story, there's a diary entry I want to read to you, a few diary entries actually from 1973, which is a little before he left home, where he's speaking about the same story. And the story, I think you'll see from his diary entries, it was something very, very deep in his heart. It was hankering. And so what it says to me, the story that you were telling us, Raj, is that he was sharing something with you, not just a story, or not just something to convince someone or even increase their faith or inspiration, but he was sharing something very, very deep, very, very personal in his heart. So I'm reading from our book, When Good Fortune Arises. Throughout his life, Lord Govinda Maharaj wrote daily entries in his diary. For the most part, these were in the form of letters to Gopal. Each letter would begin, Prabhu Gopal Kriparu, Kopasrimati Dhinati Kotigola. By the mercy of Prabhu Gopal, this day was spent thus. The entries would end with a prayer to Gopal, please give me prem bhakti, ecstatic love of God. A sample from the 1st of October 1973. On account of the Durga Puja festival, school will be closed for some time. He was a school teacher. It will be reopened on Thursday, 18th October 1973. Today, I saw a picture of Sri Chaitanya in Banabara's shop. In that picture, I saw Mahaprabhu clutching the feet of the Prema Moya Yugala Murti, the divine loving couple. This really struck me too. I see so many pictures of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's really nice. But when he saw this picture, it really did something to his heart. He said, Sri Chaitanya Dev started chanting Divya Prem Nam, Krishna's ecstatic divine names. He rejected Suska Gyan, dry knowledge. He preached Divya Nam Prem. He gave Nam Prem to all indiscriminately. Prema Taranga, the waves of Prema spread everywhere. Wherever he was going, Prema was following. Even the very hard-hearted got a touch of that Prema and their hearts were changed. This is a wonderful power of Prema. By seeing that picture of Sri Chaitanya Dev, I got a sparsha, a touch of that Prema. How can I get a picture of Sri Chaitanya Dev? By seeing his picture, I'll get a touch of Prema, and from that Prema, I'll get wonderful inspiration and bliss. Then I can give bliss to others. Prabhu Gopal, please shower this mercy on me. Give me shelter at the Prem Kutir of Sri Premananda Ji. I must drown in that Divya Prem, and giving Prem to others, put out the fire in their hearts. Another entry from October 9th, 1973. By the mercy of Prabhu Gopal, on the last 2 days, our Gita recitation program was finished here in my Ishtadev Gopal's temple. Prabhu Shri Gopal, O you who are known as Premananda, as Premamoya Purush, as Vrindavan Bihari, and as Radha Kant, by your mercy, this Gita program was finished with Ananda and Prema. Prabhu, may your place be joyful. May Prema and Ananda, love and bliss be distributed. Make me your servitor. Give me an opportunity to distribute that Prema and Ananda. Don't cheat me. Because you're Antaryami Nath, the Lord of my heart, you know my desire, and I'm begging that from you. Please give me that Prema and Ananda. Let me get it, and let me distribute it. The 1973 entries frequently mention Braj Bandhu. That was his name, his birth name. Braj Bandhu means a friend of the Brijbasis. The 1973 entries frequently mention Braj Bandhu's desire to renounce family life from 10th of October. And this is the story Maharaj was telling. Maharaj wrote in his diary. Today there was a Mahotsav, a great festival. Prasadam was distributed, and Bala Gopal Leela, your childhood pastimes were recited. Prabhu Gopal. For a long time, I've had a desire to hear songs of Man Bhanjana Leela. stories of how Krishna breaks the sulkiness of Srimati Radharani. Premamoyi Radharani had developed abhiman, loving pride, and Krishna was experiencing intense viraha katara, pangs of separation, because Radha would not permit him to see her. Therefore, there was a need for mana bhanjana. Man means sulky anger, bhanjana means to break. So mana bhanjana lila, we made a magazine many years ago about the mystery of Mahaprabhu's sannyas lila. Why did he leave home? And there's one chapter in there which we took from the songbooks of Damodar Giri Prabhu, our Guru Maharaj's cousin, was a very famous kirtaniya, and he kept a book of songs, which the songs went back for hundreds of years, and written by different famous Gaudiya Vaishnavas like Chandan Das and others, Balaram Das, etc. And one of those songs, which they often sang, was about Man Bhanjana Lila, or about how Krishna breaks the loving, sulky anger of Srimati Radharani. And this is a story that Niranjana Swami was just speaking. There was a need for Man Bhanjana. Today, by the mercy of Prabhu, it happened. Vrindavan Bihari, Krishna became Radha Prema Bhikari, a beggar of Radha's love. My Gopal dressed up like a sannyasi to beg Prema Dana from Radharani. He just mentions the story. And then in this diary entry now, he reveals something of his own very intense reaction to that Leela, which this is what I think he was really sharing with you, Maharaj. Not just a story, but something very personal. Oh Prabhu Gopal, please make me a yogi, a sannyasi like that. I don't need anything. Prabhu, I'm not asking you for material opulence, respect, glory, or anything else. You may give those thanks to my younger brother, Kripa Sindhu. Let him maintain your family. Make me a samsara vairagi yogi, a renunciate of family life. Let me beg that premadana, that wealth of love of Godhead. Let me distribute prema and ananda. Let me serve you. Please shower this mercy on me. Prabhu, please bless me with prema bhakti, ecstatic love for you. Please give this to me and let me give this to others. This was this very, very intense desire in his heart. And so much so that he couldn't control himself. We hear, sometimes he would speak about the renunciation of Śrīla Raghunath Goswami, and he would paraphrase some things from Chaitanya Charitamrita by saying that Antarnishta Bahu Vyavahar, that Mahaprabhu told Raghunath Das Goswami, Antarnishta, that inside you cultivate this prema bhakti, and Bahir Vyavahar, and on the outside you be like a normal person. And that's what he was doing. Until finally one night, he took 2 gamshas, his pen, his notebook, his Bhagavad Gita, and he left home. He went to Gadaigiri. He was born and raised in a small village called Jagannathpur. His Sripada, his family place was Gadaigiri. And he went to Gadaigiri and came to him. He said, chant. And they said, Chalo, get out. And they kicked him out. And he said, I was very disappointed. I went all over India and I didn't find my guru. He said, I knew many disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in Orissa, but they weren't my guru. He said, there was one place in India that I was saving, and that was Vrindavan. And he got on a train and he begged passage. He didn't have money from the TT, from the ticket taker, and he went to Vrindavan. And they told us that he arrived in Mathura, he stayed in a few different temples there. He went to different places, and they didn't appreciate him. Until finally he went to a place called Raman Reti in Vrindavan. And there he saw something he'd never seen before. He saw a young man wearing a dhoti. That was something he was very used to, but the difference was this was a white-skinned young man. and he saw some white-skinned ladies wearing saris, and he was astonished. He told us that in his search, he was looking for three things that he'd grown up with in his life. And he wanted to find a guru who could give him these things. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which he'd grown up with. His uncle taught him how to count on his fingers by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. As a young boy, he used to go to the 24-hour, 36-hour kirtans, 48-hour kirtans with his family members doing Hare Krishna mantra kirtan. Hare Krishna mantra was his life. The second thing which he was looking for was someone who could teach him about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Something else that he'd grown up with. At the age of 8, he'd read the Gita, the Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he was very, very attached, as you're hearing in his diary entries, to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the third thing that he wanted was someone who could teach him about the Bhagavatam. And as a young boy, we tell the story sometimes, as a baby, he would start crying. And his mother, like all mothers, would get him a toy, would hold him in her arms, would make funny sounds or tickle him or whatever, but nothing would stop him from crying. And she saw one day he was reaching out. Their book, in their house, they had a Srimad Bhagavatam, a palm leaf Bhagavatam, which had been in their family for hundreds of years. That Bhagavatam is still there today in Gadagiri, on the altar. And so she gave him that Bhagavatam and he stopped crying. He would go to sleep with the Bhagavatam clutched to his chest. He learned to read by reading the Bhagavatam. They had no fire, they had no electricity in their mud hut where he was growing up. And he would sit by the cooking fire at night. His mother could read the Bhagavatam. He was so attached to the Bhagavatam. So those three things. So when he came to Ramanreti and he saw these Western devotees, someone came and said, hey, read this magazine, Back to Godhead. Okay? So he opened it up and the first thing he saw was the Mahamantra. Oh. And then he turned the page and there's a picture of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Oh. And he looked in the back of the magazine and there's a section of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said, oh, can I meet your guru? Is he here? Oh yes, Śrīla Prabhupada's here. At that time, Brahmananda Prabhu was Śrīla Prabhupada's secretary. And our Guru Maharaj went there, and Brahmananda went in to see Śrīla Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, there's some sadhu here to see you. And Prabhupada said, just bring him in. Guru Maharaj came in and offered obeisances to Śrīla Prabhupada. He got up, Prabhupada looked at him, and Prabhupada asked him, have you taken sannyas? And Guru Maharaj said, no. And Prabhupada said, I'll give you sannyas. And he later told us, Guru Maharaj, he said that time I knew, this is my guru. Because he understood the desire in my heart. So these are a few reflections on what Niranjana Maharaj is saying. And what I feel he was sharing with you, Maharaj, was something more than just a story, but it was something very personal between the two of you. Thank you for sharing that. Bhakti Sagar Maharaj, is still here? Would you like to come here and speak? Can we get another chair, please?